Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. The Canadians pick up a massive win over the Boston Bruins 3-2 in overtime. And again, I cannot overstate how big of a win this is for the Montreal Canadiens to find a way, over the Boston Bruins here. Like, to find a way to get these 2 points, absolutely massive. It puts us, squarely back into that third in the Atlantic position. You can't oversay, how important that is. Obviously the margins are still incredibly tight. We're only 2 points ahead of Boston and Detroit, and with a Columbus win today, we're only 3 points ahead of them. They're knocking on the door just as much as anybody else is right now. Going even further, Ottawa's not exactly out of the conversation either. So, it does not matter. This win overall in the grand scheme of things, there are still, way too many games left to play for us to start, celebrating our playoff spot. But yeah, 84 points, oddly enough, puts us tied with the Tampa Bay Lightning for second in the Atlantic. They've definitely got us beat in terms of, the tiebreaker there with those regulation wins. We tend to go to overtime quite frequently. I believe we are, that was our 22nd overtime game out of 67 total games there. So not exactly a team that gets it done in 60 minutes, but today we got it done in just under 65. So we will take that for sure. Obviously, we would have loved to have won that game in regulation and, sent Boston home without a point there. But, you take what you can get. In this game, we get 2 points, and, it ends up being a 3-point win instead of a 4-point win for the Canadians. But we will still absolutely take that. So breaking down the game here, we started off with, just about as bad of a start as you could possibly have. Alexandre Carrier, who has not been a guy who's been performing very well this season. He starts us off 25 seconds into the game with a 4-minute double minor for high sticking, which is not what you want to do, in the opening of a game that is very big for the Canadians to win. So that's not ideal. And obviously Boston does score just about halfway through that frame. It's Pavel Zacha. It's an unfortunate one a little bit. It was a cross crease pass that Pastrnak was trying to give over to whoever was backdoor. Mike Matheson intercepts that pass, which is good, but then he puts it right back onto the tape of Pavel Zacha, who just kind of like backhands that one into the net. And unfortunately, Dobesh was pushed across for that cross crease pass, and unfortunately, he wasn't quite there anymore. So it kind of ended up being an open net for Zacha to put that one in. So a good defensive play, and then a very bad defensive play right after that. Unfortunately, he couldn't quite corral the puck after intercepting that pass, and it ends up going in the back of our net. Obviously, the best way to prevent that stuff from happening is to not take a 4-minute double minor for high sticking 25 seconds into a game. So did not love that start there, but Nick Suzuki gets us back in the game about 8 minutes later. A really nice play from the top line. All three of those guys on the top line get points in this one. It's kind of a broken play that Boston wasn't quite able to make their passes work, getting out of the zone. Ended up staying in the zone. Caufield is able to keep that puck in the zone, give it over to Slavkovsky. He gives it down low to Suzuki, who's pretty much wide open in front of the net. He kind of fakes going to the forehand, goes back to the backhand, and then shovels it over the pad. Gets himself his 24th goal of the season. Slavkovsky gets his 32nd assist, and Caufield his 28th assist of the season there. So a great play by all three of those guys. Good to see them, all performing and getting points on the board when they're all together on a line again. And it ends up working in our favor for sure to tie that game up. I think going into the second period, it's more of the same mistakes. Pavel Zacha scores another goal here, and this is another, in my opinion, a Lane Hutson error. I have not loved his defensive game over the last few games here. Obviously, he does wonders offensively. I keep saying that I hate, talking bad about Lane Hutson because of how well he's been doing this season. But, the last few games, he's made some critical defensive errors that have cost us goals here. This is another one, in my opinion, that was on him. They're coming into the zone. They make a pass across, and, they're on the puck carrier, gets into the high slot area, and both Oliver Kapanen and Lane Hutson both, go at and attack that puck carrier. Lane Hutson, if he had stayed, closer to the net, where he's supposed to be in that situation, he might have intercepted the pass or been able to play Zacha there. But unfortunately, him and Oliver Kapanen both go to the puck carrier and leave Zacha wide open in front of the net. And all he has to do is just kind of, pitch his stick, and he just tips over the glove of Dobesh and into the back of the net to give Boston a 2-1 lead. And again, it's just the same mistakes that we're making over and over again, is not covering the front of the net. Our net front coverage has been really, really lax and just not good at all. overall over the past, pretty much this whole season, but it's definitely become more apparent over the last few games here, and that's another example of the Canadiens not finding a way, to cover guys in front of the net, especially a guy who's already scored in this game. You should be kind of hyper aware of a guy that has already scored in this one and make sure he's not getting any more puck touches, but unfortunately he is left unmarked in front of the net, and he does a perfect job of kind of tipping that puck over. Unfortunate there, but Lane Hutson makes up for his error a little bit later on in that second period. It was a great all-around shift from that fourth line there. I feel like ever since Gallagher got healthy scratch and has come back in the lineup, he's been playing really, really well. He gets a point in this one in what was his 900th NHL game all time, so it's a very cool for him first of all, but also probably close to 2 minutes total that fourth line had Boston hemmed in their own zone. Lots of good plays by Hutson, Anderson, Gallagher, Jeannot, even Jaden Struble had a good pinch to keep the play alive about halfway through that shift, and eventually it ends up being Lane Hutson working his magic. Gets a pass from Gallagher, and then Lane Hutson just kind of does his thing at the blue line, takes a shot net that is tipped closer to the goal line by Josh Anderson, goes into the back of the net for Josh Anderson's 13th goal of the season. Lane Hutson gets his 57th assist there, and Gallagher his 15th assist. So just a great overall effort shift from all of those guys, and they get rewarded with a goal. Josh Anderson played a really, really great game. He was very deserving of the third star that he got in this game. It was a great play, very savvy play that got him this goal. If you watch that goal back, Josh Anderson, he's in the front of the net. He's covered pretty good by the Bruins defenseman there, but he kind of pushes off of the defenseman as the shot is coming in, which frees up his stick and allows him to make that tip. And it's a beautiful tip and a very nice goal from Josh Anderson that gets us back to a tie game, and that's exactly what we needed there. It ended up being the goal that we needed to keep that game tied, as no other goal scoring would happen in that third period. Lots of great chances there. Peak for Boston had a really great save with the net pretty much empty. Late into that third period, Suzuki got robbed by a defenseman there, which is unfortunate. But lots of chances for both sides in that third period, but it would stay 2-2 going into overtime. Pretty much all of overtime would go past, and then who else but Cole fucking Caufield. Apologies for the language, but you gotta say it, right? I mean, the Cole Caufield scores his 40th goal of the season, so that's impressive as is. Cole Caufield becomes the first 40 goal scorer for the Montreal Canadiens since 1994. So it's been a long time coming, and Cole Caufield absolutely deserves it. He's been knocking on the door of 40 for almost his entire career. He gets it at what a great time to get it. It's a goal that he doesn't really score very often, kind of sniffing around the front of the net. Gets himself kind of in the front of the net in an area where he's unmarked a little bit in overtime. Hudson and Suzuki kind of play pass with each other. Hudson gets it over to Suzuki. He finds a really great pass. It goes through both Boston defensemen, and he finds that seam. Finds Cole Caufield sitting alone on that back door, and he taps it back over to the other side of the net and in. That's his 40th goal of the season, and it ends up being an overtime game-winning goal that gives us that massive 2 points there. So it's Caufield's 40th, obviously. Big deal there, first time since 1994. Nick Suzuki gets his 56th assist, and Lane Hutson his 58th assist of the season there. So all around great play. It was always going to be Cole Caufield. It's either Cole Caufield or David Pastrnak who finds a way to get the goal in overtime there, and thankfully it is our goal. Early on in that overtime, Lane Hutson made a great defensive play. It was a 2-on-1 opportunity for Boston. Probably 2-ish minutes before our goal, and Lane Hutson kind of sells out in the dive play and pokes it away from Lohrei, ends up keeping the play alive. Dobish had some great saves. There was a breakaway opportunity for Zacha to get the hat trick. Dobish had to make a really great save there to keep it alive as well. So, I think overall definitely a better game in terms of defense for this team. Obviously, I think both goals could have been avoided that we got scored on in the first place, especially that second one. If we have better defensive coverage, we play our man system a little bit better, we probably prevent that goal from happening in the first place. That first one, and The first one is just a example of just not being disciplined. I feel like overall today we were not very disciplined at all. We had 8 penalty minutes in this one, which is kind of uncharacteristic of the Canadians. But it just like to get a high sticking penalty 25 seconds into a game, and he actually got away with it too. But in the third period, I believe Carrier had another kind of similar play where he totally lost control of his stick. He just had no control of what he was doing, and high sticked another guy. Unfortunately, we didn't get a penalty for that one, but again, like it's an unacceptable penalty to take. You just have to control your stick better than that, especially when it's 25 seconds into the game. That's a really unfortunate way to start. Puts us on your back foot right away. Even if they don't score, it's still brutal. So discipline definitely a factor in this one, but I think definitely can still do better defensively. But I think overall a great performance. I think that again, there's still room to clean up our act both offensively and defensively, but I think we found a way to make it work in this one. And despite getting robbed a couple of times offensively there, we found a way to get the win where it mattered. And this game absolutely did matter. As you can see, as you've probably seen, our odds to make the playoffs have definitely diminished over the past couple of days thanks to our back-to-back losses over the weekend. So it was definitely big for us to get this win here, get ourselves back up into the picture here. I think we're back up to, probably like 82 or something like that percent chance to make the playoffs. If you've seen the graphics and all that kind of stuff, we'll have to see, what happens. Obviously, still there's so many more games left in the NHL season. There are 15 games to be precise. So much room for the Canadians to move up as well as down. As I said, like the Tampa Bay Lightning, obviously they got 2 games in hand on us at the moment, but we are tied with them for second in the Atlantic at this time. But what really matters to me right now, and what should matter to the Canadians, is finding a way to keep Boston and Detroit, and especially Columbus, at bay. We do not want to fall out of the playoffs with 15 games remaining. And I think if the Canadians can find a way to get to that second gear here, maybe use this game as some momentum to kind of move and play a little bit better down the stretch, that's going to pay off really, really well. I think last season we found a way post Four Nations in February going into April to really turn our game to the next level there, and we need to find that with 15 games remaining here if we want to keep our shot at the playoffs here. Because again, obviously it's a big win. It's a big win against a team who is trying to take a spot over against us here. But with 15 games left, all of the other teams that we're racing against right now, Boston, Detroit, Columbus, and then even Tampa and Buffalo, like none of those teams are losing right now. Buffalo's 9-1-0. I think to catch them at this point is probably a lost cause. But a lot of these teams are not losing a whole lot of games, especially the ones that are plotting to take us out of the playoff picture entirely. So we need to find a way to stay locked in throughout the remainder of the season here and secure our playoff spot. So a great game here. Obviously another game coming up that's just about as big. We've got the Detroit Red Wings on Thursday in Detroit as well. So a great opportunity to get another 4-point win there on Thursday. Detroit is right in there with Boston. They've got the same amount of points as of right now with 82, only 2 points ahead of us or behind us. So it's another great opportunity for the Canadians to get a win and push ourselves further up ahead, and then keep going from there. But, any of these games, especially these ones against, division opponents like this, these are big games for the Canadians to find a way to get those wins and push those guys back behind us as much as we can. Again, it's not going to get any easier down the stretch here. We got Detroit on Thursday. We got the Islanders, a really great team, on Saturday. We got I think Columbus is coming up as well on our schedule. So it's gonna be tough. We got the Hurricanes on Tuesday, the following Tuesday, in a week today. So every game down the stretch is gonna be really tight. It's going to be tough to get those wins there, but we're going to have to find a way to dig deep and secure as many points as we possibly can in that last 15-game stretch there. So, that is all I have for this one. Congrats to Goal Caufield on that 40-goal season. Hopefully he can push for 50 in the last 15. That would definitely be something if he could push his way to 50 goals in the last 15 games. That would be absolutely magnificent. But either way, all I care about is playing better defense down the stretch and finding a way to win, get points, and maybe 9 games out of this last 15, I think, is what we need if we want to make the playoffs here. So again, that is all I have for you guys today. We got a big game, another 4-point game against Detroit coming up on Thursday, and I will talk to you after another big 4 points, 2 points, whatever you want to call it, in a win on Thursday.